Partnership, but I also wear another hat. So my day job is that I am Chief Exec of a local charity called Cumbria Action for Sustainability. It's a charity that's been going for around 20 years, and what we do is take action to tackle the causes of climate change. To do that, we run lots and lots of projects, probably around 20 a year, with individuals, with communities, with organisations, which are all about trying to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions that largely come from our use of fossil fuels like oil, coal and gas. And I'm just going to give you a few examples of the kinds of work that we do as Cumbria Action for Sustainability, which we call CAFS for short. So one of the things we do a lot of is actually helping people who are at risk of fuel poverty. We have a lot of people in Cumbria living in damp, drafty, hard to heat homes where they have to crank the heating up, and that heating is just going straight out into the atmosphere, and they're struggling to pay their bills. So we do a lot of work advising people on how to make their homes more energy efficient, cut out those drafts, cut out the damp. That reduces their bills, but it also reduces the use of greenhouse gases like oil, coal and gas. We also work with schools to help them understand their energy use and what they could do with their waste as well, and we work with the students as well as the teachers. We also run lots of training programs and events which are about helping people to understand what climate change is and the kinds of actions that they can put in place in their lives, but also in a work context. We're able to provide free advice to businesses to help them reduce their greenhouse gas emissions in a way which is beneficial to the business, usually reducing their costs and use of other resources. We also work with households who are thinking about installing solar panels or buying an EV or using an EV, and we help them understand the options and the implications of doing things like that and whether that kind of action is suitable for them. Sorry, electric vehicle. Oh, that didn't take long, did it? So we're constantly developing new projects, which means we're constantly looking for funding. So we are funded as a charity largely from grants, from trusts and foundations. We also receive funding from businesses such as Electricity North West. We have increasing numbers of businesses interested in what we're doing and wanting to sponsor us. And we also receive funding from individual donors, and we work with the local authorities and sometimes receive contract funding through them. So it's a real mix of income for us. A few years ago, Cumbria Action for Sustainability led the setting up of a collaboration called the Zero Carbon Cumbria Partnership, a collaboration of multiple diverse organisations from across Cumbria who all agree that we need to take action on climate change and we need to do it quickly. So we have around 80 organisations from the third sector, the public sector and the private sector, around 300 people who have come together over the last 4 years and are working out how do we get Cumbria from where it is now to effectively massively reducing our dependency on, particularly on fossil fuels like oil, gas and coal. That radical reduction in greenhouse gas emissions needs to come mainly from buildings and our energy use in buildings, transport, how we get around, food that we eat and how we use land, and what we consume, the goods that we consume and what we do with the waste. So what we're talking about are actions that affect all of our lives in multiple different ways. So in order for us to make progress on this issue, we need to engage with lots and lots and lots of people across Cumbria in all different sectors of society. We need to give people lots of support, we need to give people lots of advice, ideally we need to incentivise people, and we also, for some of these actions, need to be able to source and provide funding. We also need to understand what matters to people. So what are the priorities of the citizens of Cumbria, and what are the actions that people in Cumbria want to see happen? And at the same time, we also need action from the key decision makers who are responsible for the policies and the strategies and the plans and the funding streams, the investments, all of which can have an impact on all of our lives on a large scale. So to help progress that journey we're on to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. In 2020, Cumbria Action for Sustainability secured £2.7 million from the National Lottery Community Action Fund. And that's for 5 years' worth of projects, many of them led by communities. So these are all projects which are helping to deliver that ambition of getting our greenhouse gas emissions down. And this assembly is one of the projects that's being funded by that National Lottery Award. In order to come up with the question that was on the overhead just a while ago, that was identified from a series of workshops that Pete ran with many of the people who've been involved in that Zero Carbon Cumbria partnership. And Pete asked people to identify what's stopping progress on climate change, what's making that progress on action difficult. And one of the key issues that came out of those workshops was that question, or that sense that people feel unheard and unable to influence the decisions being made by those key decision makers. So that's why you're here, to help us figure that out, to help us figure out what can be done to ensure that those voices are heard. There is some background to this process in that we have an oversight panel, and if you look over there, if you want to look in more detail, there is detail about who's on that oversight panel. But that oversight panel has about 25 people on it, representing some of the key organisations in Cumbria. That includes both Cumberland and Westmoreland and Furness local authorities, the Lake District National Park Authority, the Yorkshire Dales National Park, the Environment Agency, the National Health Service. Youth sector is represented, as are businesses, and also the voluntary sector. We also have on that oversight panel a couple of experts that operate at a national level. So we have an expert on politics and democracy, and we have an expert on government. And they're helping us ensure that the process that Shared Future is running for you is run well and it's run fairly, so that all of you feel that your voices have been heard fairly within this process. The job of the panel is also to monitor progress, so we've been monitoring how the selection of you all has gone. Are you actually that mini Cumbria that Pete mentioned? It's to input on the topics that you might consider. It's to help identify the commentators that are going to come in and talk to you about topics and answer your questions. And most importantly, one of the jobs of the panel is to help ensure that we can land your recommendations. Because you're going to be working hard and you're going to be producing a set of recommendations, and it's our job to work with you to make sure that those land and that those recommendations actually do have impact and lead to change. So one of the things that we will be doing is a public launch of your recommendations. We will do as much publicity as we can about them. And we'll be planning as an oversight panel, and hopefully with you, to follow up with the organisations that specifically need to engage with your recommendations. We want to work with you to make sure we get commitment from those organisations to actually do something. Business as usual is no longer an option. So we'll be working to figure out how we get that commitment from those organisations and how we make sure that they respond to your recommendations, and that we are then subsequently able to monitor progress and report back to you and to others in Cumbria.
Thank you very much, Karen. Okay, so